inspiration from somewhere, and we're not going to get any inspiration from watching and waiting politely, because that'll never deliver a thing to us.
Yep.
That's fine.
On that point, and again in the spirit of understanding, yes, I can see it. I'm going to come to you just a second. And the gentleman at the back was this, and I'll come to you. In the spirit of what you were saying, are you, as a group, I don't know most of you, are you in favour of increased, enhanced parliamentary interventions by our Scottish You can be sure that message will be relayed back to them. Now, I'm going to take this gentleman at the back there, yes, and then in the pink shirt. Yes, sir.
Good morning. Afternoon. I've travelled a long distance from the wintry land of Scone. Crowning place of the ancient kings of Scotland while we're doing history lessons, of course. I stand before you as a member of the Scottish National Party. No boo, thank you. I also came here today because I recognise that what you guys in ALBA Party are doing is playing for Scotland. I'm wearing a blue Scotland rugby top at the moment. It could be a blue football top and the World Cup is on and oh God, do we wish we were there. But I'm going to put a question to you. Around the room, most people are of an age where they will remember Archie Gemmill scoring the greatest goal ever scored at a World Cup. Who did Archie Gemmill play for during the week? He played for Scotland in that World Cup. Gavin Hastings ran a try-in under the posts in the Parc des Princes in Paris, wearing a blue shirt not dissimilar to this one, playing for Scotland. This builds on what the lady Jenny over there was saying about all the different teams we've got. Now the SSRG might have the best defenders in the country, and we've got to use them when we play for Scotland. ALBA has certainly got the best strikers in the country at the moment, no doubt about that. The only ones that are scoring goals are the two gentlemen there, and I take my hat off to you. But the SNP are still a really important part of this, unfortunately, at the moment. They've also taken away a little bit of the shine from the Yes logo and the Yes branding, because they've confused it. Whether that's deliberate or not, I don't know, I'm just a humble member. But I would like to suggest that what people think about is everyone is trying to play for Scotland. We grew up wanting to be Kenny Dalglish. We grew up wanting to be Archie Gemmill, or perhaps one of the Hastings brothers, or some of the ladies in the women's team nowadays, to be fair. So that's what I would suggest. It's simply something, whenever we're talking to people, we tell them that what's going to happen is we are all playing for Scotland. And I might not be the best defender, I might not be the best striker, I certainly wouldn't be the best goalie because I'm not tall enough. But that's the type of message and the approach that might start to bring people together and to make them realise that it's not just ALBA, it's not just the SNP, it's not SSRG, it's not all the other acronyms and names with which we in the room are all so familiar. But we have to do something which is bigger and remind people that when we go to vote, yes, no, whatever the words that we do get a chance to vote and however that arrives, we're going to be playing for Scotland, not playing for the SNP.
Much indeed, and the warmth of the reception show you are more than welcome, and you're not alone here as a member of the SNP. Thank you very much for your contribution. I'll come to speakers in a second. Yes, in row 3, and then I think you may want to... We've got a woman, so you might be able to move away from football, even momentarily. I'll give you another one here. Here we go. There we are. Thank you.
It's just getting back to the Yes movement, a new sign for the Yes movement. I just want to make it clear that obviously we have to then decide to make a new design or go back to the old blue one, because obviously we don't want the rainbow Yes involved in our group, and that's what I'm a bit worried about. So we either have to design a new Yes logo for everybody, or else we have to go back to the original blue one. You know, the 2014 one with the blue? So that's just all I wanted to say. Okay, thanks.
So we've got a hand here, and someone, a lady there, and then a gentleman here, and then behind there, and then we'll take some more questions. While you're passing the mic along, yeah, be made aware we were going to have a break to allow raffle tickets to be sold because we've got St Andrew's declaration signed and the early day motion signed. I think we're just going to keep going with the conversation, if that is okay. I think a break might just necessarily take up a really good discussion, but we won't be able to, at the end, do that because I'm very keen that many of you have contributed and want to have that. So we'll take that at the end of this discussion if possible. Now, yes?
Hello there, I'm a local. You very neatly, I felt, avoided answering the question on civil disobedience. Very clever. And yet it's being used within the law in Westminster. Could it be used in Holyrood? Public galleries? Could we have a bit more of that? Or are you discounting it in the meantime? Also, you mentioned marches. We've marched. Are we going to march somewhere this time to Holyrood, to the Scottish Office Civil Service thing that's been built?
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much indeed. I'm actually going to ask Kenny to address your point directly so you get a direct answer to your question. But can I say, relative to civic disobedience in the Scottish Parliament, I thought it was shocking that even for the mistake that was apparently made, a woman sporting a suffragette scarf was considered as civic disobedience in our Parliament. Kenny?
Yeah, well, on the marches, yes, I think they should have a purpose and a direction, but I think that we leave to the organisers at the time. It can't just be a show, whether it's in George Square or down the Mile, but there are places that they can go to, so we address that. Civil disobedience, and the point correctly made earlier, I have to say I've obviously got experience in that, having led the SNP's Can't Pay, Won't Pay poll tax campaign. And it's something I don't rule out, but I think you have to have the issue, and we have to find that issue. Now, I've been working with the SSP in Edinburgh and with trade unions at local, regional level and seeing what we can do on the energy crisis. There isn't a comparison there. We can't just not pay because there are problems that come about, and the current operators are too astute to switch people off. We're not going to see that. They're simply enforcing self-disconnection. So I think what we have to do is to look around and look for an issue. If they do start looking at disconnecting people, then that's when you make sure that, as in the Glasgow rent strikes in 1915, no, you're not evicting people. No, you're not switching people off. There have been discussions, even before Neil and I departed from the SNP, with some members of the SNP about boycotting the BBC licence. To some extent, it's a bit belated, because I think an awful lot of people have already done that anyway. But it doesn't mean that you should not consider doing that and organising it across the country. Equally, I think to do it, you've got to have some reason for doing it. We have to find something that the BBC has done. Now, I know we can say they do it on a daily basis, but we do have to have something, because we can speak to Mr. and Mrs. Smith on the street and say that was the final straw, as opposed to simply saying we just don't like what they've been putting out, and yet another regurgitation of 1966 World Cup or whatever. So I agree that we do have to look at civil disobedience. I think what we have to do is to find the issues. I don't know what that issue is at the present moment. I think the issues will come, and we've just got to keep our eyes open and prepare for them.
Neil?
I just want to make a very, very brief point. So in around about 2012, we had the NATO debate at the beginning of the move towards independence in Perth at the SNP conference. And a speech in that debate from Kenny McCaskill really stirred me, got me absolutely fired up. And it was when he said he was tired of marching because it was time to win. Well, I'm tired of standing still and not doing anything. So all of that action has to be on the table.
Before I come to the questions, I just want to invite our remaining contributors to contribute to the... First of all, is Mary McCabe? Mary, are you here? Mary. Please welcome Mary McCabe, pensioners for yes.
Before I come to the questions,
Welcome,
I just
Mary.
want
Good to
to
see you.
invite our remaining contributors
Sorry,
to
I
contribute
didn't
to the
actually
First of all, it's
quite
Mary
close it.
McCabe.
I was
Mary, are you here and I
supposed to
can't
speak
see you?
at this thing yet,
Mary,
so
there you
it
are,
might
Mary.
be a wee bit,
Please welcome Mary
confused.
McCabe, pensioners for yes.
Not down to age, we're not I was just thinking all the strikes we're getting now.
Welcome, Mary.
on
Good to
public
see you.
sectors, and good luck to them, because obviously we're in the middle of a cost of living crisis, and people are entitled to have salaries that will at least give them peace of mind for the foreseeable future. But it brings me back, being old, of course, to previous strike periods. I remember in the 70s we seemed to have an awful lot of strikes to do with heavy industry. But by and large, most of them ended up round a negotiating table, and people would eventually they'd come to a compromise over money. That was, of course, before Thatcher got in and decided just to destroy our heavy industry anyway. But the idea was that people will always give money away. The powerful people are happy to negotiate about money, reach a compromise, furlough schemes when you're in the middle of a pandemic, put it about a bit with benefits, put it up a little occasionally, bring it down now and again, that kind of thing. They're happy to do that and keep people's minds on, will I pay the rent next week? The powerful people always want the powerless people to be concentrating all the time on, can I get a little bit more money and maybe switch my heating on a wee bit longer. They want them to keep their heads down in that. They do not want them to think about where power resides. They never want them to think about that. And they never want to voluntarily give away any power. This is why we get the likes of Keir Starmer and Anna Sarwar going on about the people they meet round the doors. You know how Keir Starmer and Anna Sarwar are never done knocking doors to in the cold street to convince people of their cause. They say that the people they meet are not interested in abstract things like independence. Their pretty little heads are all down. Can I put food on the table? Can I pay the rent? Can I put on my heating and so on? Put on food on the table for my family. The implication here is that if you start rising above tomorrow's dinner and thinking about independence, you're not a very good parent. So power is the one thing that is never wanted to be discussed by the powerful, and they're never going to give it away. So we have to think of ways to get round this. It looks like in the wake of the Supreme Court thing, they're going to be trying to use the law against us. And this is quite a difficult thing to confront, because without a written constitution, the law is what they say it is. So, well, the ways we have to do it is get round this. Civil disobedience has been discussed quite a lot. Now, civil disobedience to me is a spectrum. Civil at one end, disobedience at the other. How far along it do we want to go? There's civil disobedience on a kind of personal at-home business, like not paying your BBC licence in the past, not paying the poll tax. There's also street work, the kind of things that Extinction Rebellion got up to. There's the guy over here said that it's easier for young people to do that kind of thing than old people. Actually, logically, it's possibly easier for old people, for the simple reason that most of us don't have jobs to lose. So, carrying on street work well, like, you know, whatever they do, gluing themselves to floors or streets or whatever. Doing that kind of thing in Scotland could be counterproductive, possibly, because in the first place they won't notice it happening down there at all. They don't notice anything that happens up here. In the second place, if they do notice it, they'll just get their pet media to say, it's the fault of the Scottish Government. They can't control the place. Look how incompetent they are. They're totally destroying education, totally destroying health, and now they're totally destroying law and order. So yeah, useless. Kick them out, put down the Parliament, another excuse to do it. So the other places that you could do it, like if you go down to London and clog up the metro and so on, yeah, that's a possibility. If we have enough people doing it and enough people willing to do it, it is actually quite difficult to do something like that often. Particularly if you've got a job to lose, you can't just go swanning down to London to, fill up the central line or whatever again and again and again, because you'll soon find that you're in the world of universal credit, and that's not really good to be. So the place that really it would be effective, which again we'll come back to so often, is the House of Commons. Civil disobedience there is very easy to do because they've got 100 million stupid rules that it's quite easy to break. And it's also noticeable because if the Speaker goes into a frenzy, as he seems to quite often do, and throws you out, that's just publicity and everybody notices you. And each time that it happened with the SNP walking out, it's only happened twice I think, each time it happened, the SNP membership soared. So they've got nothing to lose. Again, the MPs really are on a spectrum. I've got a wee bit hope possibly in the new leadership. I don't know anything really about this Stephen Flynn. I know quite a lot about Mary Black, but yeah, Stephen Flynn, we'll see how that goes. But certainly the MPs in the House of Commons have to make up their minds also where they are in the spectrum. Are they respectable or are they free? They can't be both.
And our last two speakers before I take final questions from the audience now, we have from Salva either Brian or Craig. Where are you both? Are you either of you here? Can't see you, you can jump up and catch my eye if you're around. And William Duguid. Oh, yeah. Yes, William. William, of course. It's actually really nice to see William because William faithfully retweets in his own words my articles from the National. I have noticed, William.
Well,
William runs.
Your words, of course,
Welcome, William.
Hello, I'm William Duguid, and I'm part of the Perth and Kinross. Yes.
Yay!
So, we don't have to make any alterations to our particular name. The other part of our name is Destiny. That's actually named after the Stone of Destiny. It's not a religious sect or anything like that. I was delighted that as a result of a Leslie Riddick meeting back in October in Burnham, a group formed around the hub to create one of those rallies that took place on the evening of the Supreme Court decision here in Perth, not a patch in Inverurie, I'm afraid, but nevertheless, in Perth, where the applause is usually warm and short, and we attracted, I told the Courier 250 people and they printed it, which is quite amazing, quite amazing. When you're in, hub 4 days a week, as I tend to be, because my wife's planning to divorce me soon, probably, you do get to take the temperature of the yes movement. Because in our hub, we do have all shades of opinion. We have, as part of the new group that's just formed, a couple of Greens. We've got quite a lot of SNP folk. We've got a little group of ALBA folk that tends to be growing at the minute. And of course we have a lot of honourable people like me who are not aligned to any political party at all. And so we do have, oh thank you, we have all shades of opinion, and that is important because one of the things, one of the takeaways for the next year as a movement we move forward is we absolutely have to drop all the infighting and nonsense that has been going on. Because, let's face it, our opponents can't stand the sight of each other, and yet they still manage to collude in local authorities and all sorts of nonsense like that. But they managed to work together. They find some sort of common ground, even if it's the common ground of absolute evil. So, obviously, much more unites us than separates us. So that's the absolute first thing we need to do. We need to find a way of working together productively. Now, in the Hub, we have lots of robust discussions. We've been discussing lots of things about plebiscitary elections and whether it's Westminster or Holyrood. We're leaning towards Holyrood because the franchise is right and we get to choose the timing. And other things, Liberation, Salvo, all that sort of thing. And they all have their place, and I think we should encourage people to look into them and feel if they're comfortable with them. And, you know, when we have the democratic event and Westminster still says no, these things will come into play. Inevitably they will. So we have all those shades of opinion, and if the discussions get a bit robust, we have safety words. Lampshade is one. If you're in the Hub and you hear the staff say lampshade, that means, ooh, we're getting a bit juicy here, stop it. The other one, I can't say in public, but it's the sort of thing you might scrape off your shoe. Anyway, so unity is the first thing, and we are working hard at that. It's not always easy, because we do have some tricky discussions, but we are getting there, and it's getting better. The other thing we have to do, obviously, is ramp up our activities in the next year to make sure we get out and speak to people, and that we also encourage our own supporters who come in, because it's mostly our supporters who come into the Hub. We equip them and encourage them to go out to talk to their friends, colleagues and relatives on the sort of ongoing basis. You need to change minds. And also to listen to them about what they're going through, because what they're going through at the minute is rubbish. They're going through the choice between eating and heating, some of them. They're going through worry about what happens next. They're going through worries about climate change. They're doing all of that against the background of a Westminster government that doesn't seem to give a monkey's about any of it. So we've got to reach out to them where they are and talk to them and bring them round, those who may be doubtful about whether Scotland can do this, that absolutely we can, and that it's and maybe not the absolute solution to all the problems, but it's the start. On day one, we start getting better, and then it's up to us. And that's what we have to do. We do have a lot of activities in next year that will involve going out to meet people in various parts of Perthshire, and also here in Perth, where Yes Perth City, see, it's another organisation with Yes in its title, has just about doubled its steering group, and it's ramping up its engines to go out and do a lot of things in the next year and really be visible and impactful. That's important. The third thing is that we have to encourage the politicians in all parties. I think ALBA are probably on board with this, to be honest, but those of us even who are SNP should be gently encouraging, or maybe being a bit more forceful with their politicians about the idea that they are indeed, as one of my esteemed colleagues said, playing for Scotland. And yes, absolutely they must. I always wish I was a fly on the wall at some of the constituency association meetings of the SNP that are just coming up, but unfortunately I'm not afforded that privilege. But I get the feeling that one or two people at that meeting are going to feel some heat soon, and that's a good thing, because we're all playing for the same reward. And apart from that, what I want to do today is listen to what you guys have to say, because that's also taking the temperature of the Yes movement. And it's been great to come along to hear this and to have the opportunity to do that. So thank you guys very much for inviting me. And at this point, I will respectfully disappear.
Before you do, William, can I say that you are the embodiment. Your very being demonstrates why the Yes groups across Scotland, and indeed beyond, have been, are, and must remain the beating heart of this movement. That is what we are all about. Thank you so much. And to assist in William's deliberations at his next meeting, because it's come up, and let's have a vote on this again. We've had a discussion about where the plebiscite should be, if it's going to be via an election. And I'm keen to understand from you all, who here thinks the place for that election is via Scottish parliamentary plebiscite in the Scottish Parliament at Holyrood? And who believes that should be done via Westminster election? Almost unanimous. Apart from, you ruined it. We were almost there. Yes, I know, but you're not going to get here today. With one contrary opinion at the back, I think that's an overwhelming position that you can take back to your Yes group today. Now, I think we have a couple of other points, and then we're going to move to conclude. I think yourself, David. Any more? And then one more at the back, lady. Three in total. Speak now, forever hold your peace. You can't all come in at the end. It's so unsporting of you. Right. Can I ask you, just so we know, those who wish to ask a question, can you raise your hand and keep it raised so we can see where you are? And those will be the last questions. So, are you watching, Alexander, Robert? We've got somebody, there's a lady over here. Yes? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 of you. You know who you are. Don't cheat. And we'll take it one after the other as quickly as possible. David, you're going to demonstrate how to ask a brief question, make a brief comment for everyone. David. Yes, it's you.
The subject is borders, which I have a bit of experience of, taking trade out of the EU into Switzerland and back again. So borders, people seem to be afraid to even mention it as if somehow it's a bad thing. Well, Switzerland and France share a border. There are no checks on the people going backwards and forwards. You don't need your passport. However, if you've got goods, that's a different story. So my question is, considering borders work very effectively between Switzerland and France, we are currently not in the customs union. The experience of not being in the customs union can be perfectly demonstrated in Northern Ireland. They are in the customs union, and so they're part of the EU for trade, as well as the UK, and they're doing better than any other part of the UK. Scotland can do exactly the same. So I wanted to know what the panel's thoughts are on a free travel area for people, which I understand is in place at the moment and is likely to continue, and what the benefits would be. And there was one little fact, I wonder if anyone had spotted it. Dover, they've not been checking imports through Dover into the UK because they can't afford the extra queues. So they did a spot check on 22 trucks of meat. 21 of them were not fit for human consumption and would not have been caught unless they had done the spot check. So what else has come through the border, do you think? So I want to know from the panel, borders is something we shouldn't shy away from. We should show and demonstrate how effectively it works elsewhere. What are the benefits to Scotland as an independent country? We're in EFTA, in a customs union. Would we not be benefiting like Northern Ireland?
Thank you very much indeed. And people who you want to say yes, we'll just get the mic to you. Hello.
I'm Joan Duncan from Scandinavia, and the question is quite a simple one. We've just got a new leader of the SNP and the Westminster Group. How hopeful are you that he's going to do what is rumoured and run Westminster the way he wants to, rather than perhaps be directed from elsewhere? And do you think he can work with them?
For those who couldn't hear, the question was how helpful do we think Stephen Flynn, as the newly elected leader of the Westminster Group, will do in running Westminster. Hopefully he'll be running us out of Westminster, because that's what we want him to do. Right, next question. You're here, and then, sorry, the gentleman in the green. You got the mic first, yes sir.
So, we've went all to Ian Shaw, Lisa Ulanji, it's ALBA, by the way, ALBA. So go home, practice in front of the mirror. I know Alex did. ALBA, because you know every single Gaelic speaker in Scotland every time you get it right, okay? What I want to say, my name's Duncan McCabe, I'm from Dundee. I was involved in radical independence last time. We chapped 28,000 doors in Dundee. They weren't all in. But we were very visible, and we took the campaign out to the housing estates. And that's why we were so successful in Dundee. And we didn't go and tell folk on the doorstep what we thought. I said, well, what do you think about this referendum? What bothers you? And then you deal with what it's in their head. Okay, you don't need to make a speech to folk. So, whatever happens, and I thought the Supreme Court decision was great, the mask slipped, it hit the deck, and it reverberated right across from Stretland to Stranraer. Well, I heard it. The mask slipped. There is no democracy. We need to fight for it. We need to start a campaign now in the spring. Folk like the boy in Perth, he's right, get organised, bring everyone together, and maybe do some work, not in civil disobedience, no yet, just on chapping doors and learning how to speak to people, learning how to convince people that there's another way of looking at things. We campaigned on another Scotland as possible last time, and you know, and if we could do the business here in a few years, people in England will go, oh Christ, look at that, maybe another England's possible too. We could be an inspiration for the whole of these islands. The problem is how we actually deal with the next election if it is a plebiscite. My instinct says Holyrood. The reality is it's going to be a GE. I think that's just the way it is. However, what do we do then for our MPs? I'm quite happy for them. I thought what Kenny and Neil did was great. But my instinct again says we shouldn't be there at all. And if we get that win in a GE, I don't think there should be any question of elected representatives, whether they're SNP, ALBA, Scotland United or whatever, actually taking their seats. They're not going there to sit on the couch on We're negotiating independence from here. And I think that's got to be clear, and we need to make that case to the SNP and to all the others. The third thing, really quickly, is the other part is a three-part strategy. Can't get it, fight and win, and then build the Scottish state. I'm not a great fan of a huge state myself, but we've got to put in place things, and that's what worries me at the back of my mind is that the last 8 years we've not actually put in the stepping stones to create that Scottish state. There is no publicly owned renewable energy company, for example. We're going to have to do everything very quickly, and I think that's got to be part of any constitutional convention that we do get to actually function, and I hope we do.
Robert Morgan here, and then there's just one, there was two more at the back, is that right? Yeah, 1, 2, and that's it, yep.
This is a very short question. In fact, it comes from an ALBA East Lothian member who can't be here today. They got in touch to ask if you could get the video up for 7 o'clock tonight. This is not a lot to watch on television tonight.
As we all brush up on our French, thank you very much indeed, Morgan. Now, there are two more at the back, and then I'm going to move to closing remarks and answers to some of those questions. Yes, hello.
Just to say, when I was in Castlemilk, I noticed 2 white vans, and when I went up to approach them, they were installing smart meters so that people would cut themselves off. And I realised that the energy bomb, I don't think they die, is going to explode. People now are sitting in their homes miserable with hot water bottles. We could take advantage of that by ALBA having a campaign of Scotland, energy-rich Scotland, that would have people be able to have warm homes with independence, connected to the realities. And also somebody said that people walk by.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. There's one final question, just here. A couple of rows in front, Robert. Oh, right. Second last question. Hi there.
Hi there. I'm Maggie Chessie. I'm Vice Convener of ALBA International. And one of the things we've been working on, along with Mark, is to get ALBA to Rennes, just Kikat's university there, and yeah, a bit of international attention. And because it's really important, we've got people out there who are going to recognise us when we declare independence. It's a really, really important part of what we're trying to do. That's one thing. The second thing I would like to say is that I attended a St Andrews meeting as an ALBA member in a largely SNP grouping in the Yes group. And I was a bit nervous about going because although I kept pushing the idea we work together, however, I went in and was instantly surrounded by SNP members who wanted to come and talk, who wanted to share stuff about their frustrations. And some of those were elected members. So I came back from that incredibly cheered up that in fact there is a lot of dissatisfaction with the way things are at the moment, and that has to change. And I suppose my question really is, if we get to the point where, you know, like if it's a Holyrood plebiscite, how are we going to make sure that the leadership who represent us are going to declare for independence? How are we going to get that? Because Holyrood, it would make sense, because if Westminster don't like it, then let them challenge it. Let them do it. But the fact is, the leadership at the present moment don't appear to be doing that. How can we shift that? Because if we shift them, the SNP will come with us.
Thank you, Maggie. And final, the last question here is gentleman in the green.
Julian Smith from Yes Dunfermline West Fife. I've got a couple of points. First is that I'm not clear how a Scottish parliamentary election would work as a plebiscite because of the old system, the additional member. How would the votes be counted? How would it be taken account of? So maybe somebody could explain that to me. And the second point I want to make is that the Leave in Scotland are planning a Scottish convention along the same kind of lines as we've been discussing here. Could there be some liaison with Gordon McIntyre
I'll answer that.
to make sure there are two conventions running in parallel?
Thank you, Julian. Well, just on your last point, which I'll answer, Gordon phoned me 2 days ago and asked me if I would participate, and I said, absolutely, of course, I would participate. I had invited Business of Scotland to this event. Unfortunately, Gordon was on a trip down to England and couldn't make it himself. But I think it's a demonstration of a requirement by the people who support independence that everybody works together. And you've got an absolute commitment to that. Now, there's a number of points I'm going to go around as quickly as possible and perhaps divide them up amongst our speakers and ask you to encompass your closing remarks in it. Kenny, particularly on the point of the energy campaign, because you've absolutely been fronting that, if I could ask you just to address some of the remarks around that. And obviously there was some discussion around EFTA, which we'd had previously from some of our speakers. Borders, is it an issue? No. Kenny, and then if you can encompass your closing remarks. Thank you. Thank you.
I mean, I think I'd just close on saying that that's what we have to do to get across to people, because, you know, it's not enough just simply to say when you want an independent Scotland, as Bill Bonnar, as others were saying, we've got to link the Constitution with the social and economic issue. I have to say, I think the energy issue is actually being subsumed, frankly, in the cost of living crisis. It's not that people can't afford to heat their home. If they heat their home, they can't afford to eat. If they can't afford to eat, they can't afford to get school meals. If they're not on free school meals, and there's the poverty trap. So the whole thing is coming together. But in Scotland, we can make the point, we are a rich country. We have more energy than we require ourselves. We're self-sufficient. We are, you know, losing hand over fist, never mind the opportunities that are going with it. So that is fundamental in getting the method across there. On borders, I think, as people have said long before me, I think Alex said it in previous meetings, you know, the one thing about COVID showed that borders are a good thing. They are a political issue. As a representative for East Lothian, I sometimes travel, and indeed on Monday I will be changing train at Berwick, because that's how I go down. When my wife comes down, somebody will drop her at Berwick. You know, so we're used to crossing the borders. That's why, as I say, we have to move towards the points made by Mark in terms of ERSG. Of course, we're going, as the Republic of Ireland always had, in terms of a Common Travel Area Agreement. That will have to exist, but there will have to be the opportunity for trade to take place, which is why EFTA membership allows East Lothian farmers, it allows the energy work to come up and down the borders. It allows Tarmac, which is a big employer in my constituency at Dunbar. That allows Tarmac to trade because most of their trade is south of the border. Of course there have to be checks, but those checks can be resolved. It's not that hard for Tarmac, but that's why, as I say, we have to have EFTA membership along with the Common Travel Area Agreement. That's the future for us.
Thank you, Ken. Neil, can I ask you to address the question particularly about working with the SNP Westminster Group and whether Stephen Flynn will make a difference to how that works?
So in terms of how relationships will develop, my door is absolutely open. I'll work with anybody from any party. Thanks very much, Taz. From any party. This room is the beating heart of the independence movement, as Taz said. People from all parties and none with one ambition, which is to see Scotland thrive and put its own political, cultural, economic and social interests first. And so I want to work with anybody. Now, I've written to Stephen to congratulate him and Mary. That was the first thing I did after I got the news. I've written to him. I've not yet had a response, but I certainly will continue to engage in whatever way I can. It has been a very, very difficult few years for all of us, because we all want to see that Scotland United team play. We all want to play a part in delivering that dream, that ambition. And so, yes, my door is open. I don't want to just comment on the plebiscite with regards to Westminster. Now, I mean, it's a different franchise. That's fraught with problems. It's to a foreign parliament, which is fraught with problems. But my position on that, which is just my own view, and you can disagree with me if you like, is that it should be fought as Scotland United. And that's absolutely clear. So it must represent all of Scotland. We know that there are Tories, Lib Dems, Labour and other parties who support independence but will not vote for the SNP. And so that's an impediment for running it as a parliamentary party campaign. And I would say that, yes, go down, refuse to swear the oath, say we want to be afforded the same privileges as Sinn Féin, but we are here to negotiate independence, nothing more. Bang the table and start negotiations.
Give us your final marks and incorporate within them some of the remaining questions that were outstanding, which I know you've remembered because you remember everything.
Absolutely. and if I don't remember, I'll get a helpful nudge from the back, no doubt. I was thinking about ALBA's response. I see Duncan nodding away there. All these months of practicing in front of the mirror have paid off at last. ALBA's response to some of the points that have been made. Now, I was thinking about the connection between the energy costs and potential civil disobedience and the constitutional question. It's possible to work out what people should be paying for electricity in Scotland today. From wind power, from hydropower, from offshore wind power, which is the vast overwhelming bulk of Scotland's electricity supply, and the remaining nuclear station for that matter. It's quite possible to work that out. And maybe we should have a leaflet in every home that says, you know what you're paying, this is what you should be paying. And maybe down the road, when the conditions are right, when you can protect people who engage in it, maybe that's what we should pay, and no more, if protections can be. So that's the sort of idea that comes out of gatherings like this, and why it's so important. It's also important to have the manifesto that Mark and Tim have outlined and Commonweal have done so brilliantly over the last week, and if I may say so, the wee ALBA book has done in the 40 meetings across Scotland. There's no better illustration than the question of EFTA. For a second, I want everybody here to imagine that you are First Minister of Scotland. in a year, months, weeks, years' time or so, and you're negotiating independence, right? And you're sitting across the table from Sir Keir Starmer or Richie Sunak, two cheeks of the, two very similar conventional politicians. And they look at you in a haughty way and say, what plans have you got for your trade arrangements and your market access? I mean, after all, the English market is so great a matter for you. Now, you want to look at them and say, well, in 5 years' time, we think we might be able to join the European Union? Or do you want to look at them and say, in 3 months' time, we'll be in EFTA? Not only will we have that access, but we can sign every EFTA agreement with every country in the world and join onto it, including the European Union and the UK, and we're moving into the European Economic Area. You see, once you think about that, once you put yourself in the point of negotiation, it's a no-brainer what you should do. And of course, it doesn't remove the option of what you'll do in the medium term. But you've got to get yourself into that position of realpolitik. You know exactly where you're going, because out of that confidence transmits the confidence to the people, because they want to vote for folk or vote for a concept that's been worked out, they know can work. It's not going to let them down. And that brings me to my final point, which is that I started with Bonnie Prince Charlie in the room upstairs. Let me finish with something about Robert the Bruce and the Arbroath Declaration of 1320. Now, let's think about it. This letter to Pope John, the appeal to international recognition of the day, that's what it was about. And that appeal was made after Scotland had been re-won. That's when it was made. It was an appeal for recognition, not an appeal to come and help us eject the remaining English garrisons. They'd already been rejected. In fact, the Declaration of Arbroath, it was sealed anywhere, it was probably sealed in the north of England, where Bruce's army were encamped. So they're already won the day on the field of battle, and nowadays it'd be electoral politics. They were appealing then for recognition. But what did that declaration say? It said, look, good King Robert's a great guy. He's won in the field of battle. He's a marvellous king. He's our champion. He's our hero. And then it went on to say, but incidentally, if he ever lets us down, if he sells out, if he betrays his and our rights, we'll get rid of him and we'll get somebody else in his place. So I'm in favour of working together. I'll go to any meeting, appear on any platform with any independence advocate. I'll go to conventions. I'll go to everything that can be organised to bring the movement together, to bring it to fruition, which most of us spent a lot of time through our lives doing it. But if we're working together, it has to be working together. Not sitting back together, not doing nothing together, not being immobilised together. And the people who are part of that working together, from whatever background, have to be people who are prepared to take the relevant actions to bring this argument, this debate, this desire, this ambition for Scotland to fruition, to our independence. Now, we've had a fantastic debate this morning and this afternoon, and our convener, our chair, Tasmina, has said to me this is going to reconvene on the 14th of January in Edinburgh to take the arguments and the positions that have been put forward, because we've had a good steer from people the way you want things to develop, and that will be formulated. And also we had, despite the weather conditions, lots of people who we had turned away from today's meeting who need their chance to come and make their contributions. So when I said earlier that there were things we could take from today, well, I think there's one we should take first, and that's a vote of thanks to our marvellous chair, Tasmina McCabe. And secondly, I take great inspiration from your contributions that the spirit of 2014, that wonderful, flowering yes movement, has genuinely been reconvened today here in Perth. Thank you very much.